So today we're talking about the future of work. It's a topic that can usually get me ranting and raving, and it'll probably fill in from there. So let's just start out right off the top with both of you. What do you see as the future of work as it applies to technology?
Well, technology is really the driver of everything. It is accelerating, it's driving, it's enabling, it's supporting. It really is across the gamut. But really in terms of how it is interconnecting us and also accelerating the pace of market developments in business and allowing us as well, as we are interconnected with incredible mobile computing power, enabling us to work in different ways. So as we see technology speeding everything up, it's also allowing us to gather data, to have much faster customer feedback loops, whether we want the data or not, and also being able to be able to respond. So we need to be able to respond much faster, and it's actually changing the nature of work itself. As we get those feedback loops, we're needing to be able to respond and pivot and understand like what are the next steps are. So rather than work be linear and structured and much slower, we're having to deal with a very, very different type of work environment and business environment.
Archana?
Yeah, as an IT leader, all employees of Atlassian are a customer for an IT organization. So when we think about the different diverse group of employees coming into our workplace, how we meet their needs and how we really unleash the potential of every team within Atlassian is top of mind for me. And we are trying to stay at the cutting edge of technology to enable that, to drive strong collaboration with tools such as Zoom. Every meeting in Atlassian is a video meeting, so everybody shares video, and it doesn't matter where you are, whether you're in an office here or in Sydney, Australia, or working from home, right? So that kind of operating, because we want to really make sure that teams are highly collaborative, highly productive, and get their work done in the most efficient manner. So work is, for me, the future of work is being led by technology almost, right? We're looking at how technology enables a different way of operating, but with a high degree of efficiency.
So let's talk about expectations. I mean, call me crazy. I think there's a gap there between what the company expects and what the worker expects. Sophie, can you walk us through kind of that disconnect?
Well, I think we haven't really paid that much attention to how to get the most out of our workers. For about 100 years, we have thought that money was the sole motivator, which there's so much data now to prove that that's not the case. So I think that as we can use technology to customize and be able to, as Archana says, be able to focus on each different employee and sort of say, well, how do you work best? I mean, let's not have 9 a.m. morning meetings if you're completely asleep at that time. And we can actually adjust and change some of those things. So when we see employees sort of looking to be able to take advantage of some of these changes, it is going to be of benefit. I mean, I do see that cliched win-win. I do see the huge win-wins in being able to marry talent and technology, being able to allow people to be, to perform at their best. I think there are, when we're looking for companies to be able to be responsive and to be able to pivot and to be able to take all this information in, they're asking a lot more of their employees these days. And so what are they going to be giving back in response in order to be able to help support them and do that? So I think there's bridging the gap on both sides, because a lot more is being asked of every single employee in a very uncertain world. I mean, human beings are not so comfortable with change. That's just who we are. The psychology of it is challenging, and when you're trying to get people to deal with constant change as being their new reality, we have to be more empathetic. And so, I think empathy and really understanding that the soft skills are rising in importance as a result.
On the tech side, what
yes,
are the
so
expectations?
the right thing for employees, the right thing for the company, because the number one currency that a company has, the biggest asset any company has in the product world is their talent. And if you're not investing in making sure that talent is highly productive, highly collaborative, and be able to adapt to the change, that you can't resist change. The market is changing faster, the companies are changing faster, the talent coming in is coming with different sets of skills. So we have to embrace that change. And I think as companies realize that asset of their talent base, making that asset the strongest in a company will allow them to build better products, will allow them to have drive better customer experience.
So just to follow up, we talked about the intersection between tech and expectations. What's the intersection between culture and the actual metrics? Like, I'm in a field where it's a little hard to track, or at least aligned to revenue, so I'm playing with Tableau dashboards and doing other assorted fun things. But how do you see the culture and the metrics? Like, where does that give? Like, yeah, you can measure collaboration, you can measure productivity, but then once you get into analytics of how a person performs, it gets a little stickier. So I guess what are some of the potholes in that win-win?
I think generally we're actually not very good at understanding productivity, and most companies, many companies are not actually tracking the right things in terms of productivity that's really going to measure what's working in their company. But I think what's important is if we can, there's much more understanding now that qualitative metrics are important as well as quantitative, and for things like employee engagement, there are certain elements of that are critical to really understand what's going on with that employee, which aren't absolute. They're not on a sort of 1 to 10 scale that's very specific, but they are critically important to include in the mix. So I think having metrics which make sense in different situations, as well as the rate at which those metrics are being met, and understanding what's happening if things aren't moving with the progress that a company wants, what's actually stopping that, and really sort of going deeper potentially into the psychology of how can we really bring people along. And so when it comes to culture is fundamental to helping people really feel safe and belong and be able to take risks and be able to speak up and collaborate effectively. And so culture becomes critically important as a sort of base level to allow us to operate in a very uncertain world. So yes, there are certainly elements that can't be measured very easily, but they are going to be critical to allow companies to be able to move at the speed that they are now needed.
Yeah, at Atlassian, we have one of our values is open company, no BS. So that part of culture can sometimes introduce some interesting challenges when we're trying to roll out new technologies, right? Like, how do we embrace that culture and leverage that culture to roll out technology becomes an important thing for us. And if you look at the skills that millennials are coming into the workforce with, they are used to working that way. They're used to working in a very open, very social, very collaborative way, and enabling that. I almost feel like companies should have a happiness metric or something, something that connects the dots to this one metric that you can say, how do you measure the happiness index? I think countries are trying to do that. It'd be great to have industries and companies adopt a happiness metric, because it's not just about what you're working on and the tech you have at stake. It's more than that, right? It's what value are you, as an employee, I measure myself on what value I'm adding to the company and what value am I getting from it. Am I growing? Am I learning new things? So there's a lot there, and psychology, I think you use that word, it becomes an important factor in really understanding. We can't just put an engagement dashboard, for using Tableau, as you said, and say, okay, our employees are perfectly happy. I don't know why they keep leaving, right? So it is important to look at it more holistically than that, and I don't think we quite figure that out.
Oh, not at all.
No, I think right? It's all a work in progress, and the challenge, one of the many challenges, is that every single company is different, and it's based on whatever industry, but how the business is operating, what technology it's using, how it's using the technology, and the people in it. And that's all evolving. And I was saying earlier that I look at companies now as sort of being like living organisms, because it's not a static thing anymore. And if some people leave and new people come, it's going to have a slightly different feel to it. And these are things that we're having to adjust to, because we've had these sort of very machine-like boxes, and that was kind of what we did, and we have very linear things that we were doing, and these lines are blurring, and what we're doing is blurring, and the skills that we're using and the skills that we need to use to get our job done are incredibly different than what they were 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, years ago. And just trying to help people be able to be ready to work like that and to think on their feet every single day, it's a very different environment.
So Archana, what technology should we have on our radar if we're actually going to set out to do this?
So the one thing that I have found just in my couple of decades being in this space is companies that are data hungry, that really mine the data, that drive decisions off of data, that get insights out of data, and that are able to use data to not only drive revenue and better products, but also drive better customer experience. Those are the companies in today's world that are being rewarded more and more. So as an IT leader, one of the things that I'm razor focused on, my team has been working on, is really building out a very strong data foundation for the company, where every data source comes into one place, and that can be then, we believe in the democratization of data is what we call it, in enabling a very, very significant level of self-serve to our business stakeholders. So we're not in the way of leveraging that data, but we are responsible or stewards of making sure that data is complete, high quality, secure, and the right people have access to it. So data becomes a very, very important place from a technology perspective. Now, once you have that good, strong base data, and you're driving that self-serve to your businesses, you can do a lot on top of that, right? So some of the things that we're playing around with is data science capabilities and AI, ML. Now you have trusted, reliable data. How do you up-level the game in terms of making sure that data is fed to you rather than you going to have to mine for it? So there's technologies that we are experimenting with, incubating at Atlassian in all of these spaces. The other thing for an IT leader, you have to make sure that your capacity of your organization is pivoting more towards driving transformation and growth for the company. In IT, we build it, we run it. So the run can take up a lot of your capacity. So we're looking at technologies such as RPA to really automate a lot of our operational processes so that we can leverage bots for doing things that human beings will use for, and human beings are more being leveraged in areas where high degree of cognitive skills are required. So we're shifting work off of being more on the run side to being more on the transform and incubate side.
So just to follow up on that, the data quality part, right? I mean, there's so many companies that talk about big data, AI, all this stuff, and they can't even get their little data right. How long did that take? And I guess what are the landmines?
We're still a pretty young company, and right from the time the company's inception, we have been very, very data hungry, I'll say. So it was always important at Atlassian to get our data foundation right, and I joined Atlassian just a little over a year ago, so I was lucky to inherit an IT stack where the data was pretty solid, which is not the case in many companies I've been in, right? Getting that foundation right is everything. I think we're still reacting to new sets of data, new sets of data streams coming in, but we always pivot on making that a priority. It's just kind of become part of the DNA of the company, which is very unusual. You're absolutely right. If you don't get that right, you're going to get everything up above in the stack wrong, right?
So all this data sounds great, but what are some of the implications of using more data in the workplace? Like what can go right, what can go wrong?
Well, people have to know what to do with it. And this is where I think IT has an incredibly strategic role now not only in terms of digital transformation and how that fundamentally changes the business and the role that IT plays in that transformation, but also then when data is coming in and helping, we don't have enough people in data science. It only, popped up 2007, but now we need so many people who are working in marketing, who work in HR. All of these people need to have a lot more understanding of what to do with, and this is what to do with that data and how to use it, and there can be bias in the data, so what can we do about that? I mean, there are a lot of things that we need to pay attention to so that we can use that data effectively. And I think they're hugely powerful things that can be done, taking away some of the boring roles and really getting us to function, as Archana was saying, in terms of the things where human beings really are good at, inspirational thought, non-sequential thought, those type of things, which we haven't been focused on. So I think there are many challenges as when we don't have as many data. People who have enough understanding of how to deal with data. But I think there are going to be some incredibly positive things. I do also think that we need to be thoughtful about it, because there are lots of amazing things that AI can do. And there are other things which aren't so amazing. And if we can be thoughtful about how we move, how we use AI and how we can really use it to great advantage, there are a lot of amazing things that we can get done that way. For our workers, how we understand them, how we sort of respond to them and help them engage and support them, as well as obviously externally for our customers.
Do you think companies need to focus more on data literacy? I mean, I always just out in the field, I always find this gap. Like, yeah, we need more data scientists, but there also needs to be just generic data literacy, basically for everybody. Like, if you want this bottoms up, I kind of want the intern to know a little bit of data too.
Certainly. In fact, the World Economic Forum a couple of years ago came out and had said they'd looked at the two basic skill groups that they thought that every single person would need going forward. One was basic technical skills, and the other were interpersonal skills. So, it's really, do we have this understanding, and how are we going to be able to work together in this very technology-infused world? And I can see it in my kids, my Gen Z kids, and how they work and understand technology, and it's much more fluid, and they're looking for different strategies and different places of information, and they use technology very different, think about it very differently than I do. So we all need to try and get more familiar with it and have that basic level in order to be able to use all the benefits of it.
I think it's more of I completely agree that, again, Gen X, Gen Y coming into the workplace already have a significant amount of technical skills or understanding of technology. But to your point about data, I see that across the business, that there is a comfort level with data. I think most people think of it as tools, right? I need this to do that. And I need good data to drive this. I need data to help me make decisions. That comfort, it doesn't matter. It's not just honed in on IT or engineering. That is across the company. Finance analysts, you hear about roles such as finance analysts, HR analysts. All of them have pretty good data skills. Like they can leverage, they can run queries, they can use dashboards, they can create dashboards. So that skill is definitely coming into the workplace, and it's not just restricted to IT. The other thing I would say is I'm also seeing a lot more of new hires in the interns as well as new grads coming into the company with kind of mixed skills. There's a little bit of art and science. So fields such as cognitive science, where you study psychology as well as computer science, and you're learning HCI or human-computer interactions as part of your college degree, I think are going to be what's needed for the future.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just talking to a cybersecurity expert just earlier who was saying we need more people, and so this is a super tech guy who was like, we need more people studying liberal arts as well, because that's where some of the critical reasoning and problem solving is coming from. So it was very interesting to hear him saying that. Again, it's this sort of both sides of the coin.
Well, I know Intuit, I interviewed the guy in charge of their AI, and that was one of those big things, is he's hiring English majors and stuff like that, because
Right.
you can teach AI, but they need to tell a story,
Yep.
and they need to sound more human. And so he's looking to fill in those gray areas, so to
Right.
speak. How do you go about managing centralized and decentralized teams?
At Atlassian, our mission is actually to unleash the potential of every team. And today, more and more, you see teams that have a mix. They're globally diverse. It's very rare that you'll have a team where everybody, the finance analysts, the data scientists, the analytics team, the data engineers, they're all sitting in the same room in the same location. So they're globally diverse. We've completely embraced that. We're also doing some work in really understanding what makes remote work successful. I mentioned that we do video. Every meeting is a video meeting. So one of the things that we're realizing is it's very ineffective to have one person or two just on the phone or in a remote location and 8 people sitting in a room. It's a terrible experience for the 2 people that are remote. So one of the norms that we're going after is maybe everybody should be remote. Then it's kind of level playing field, everybody's voice is heard, and people don't hold back. So you have much richer collaboration, much richer conversation. So these are things we're experimenting with. I wouldn't say that we've, again, solved it, because I think we're learning as we experiment with this. But we're going to have to adapt to this world where things are centralized and decentralized. We can't afford to just say work only gets done when everybody gets together in a room. We don't have that luxury anymore.
So I've seen this year after year, basically, where companies go, we need to be centralized. No more work from home, everybody get in the office.
Yeah.
And then I see it go the other way. I guess how should companies think about that? And should they be thinking about centralized versus decentralized, almost based on function?
I know the company you're thinking about. I think if you don't support people when they're not working in the office, and you don't support them properly and really understand that each person is individual and people are aware of how to manage them properly that way, you're going to have some ineffective communication. And what Archana was saying in terms of remote, there are other companies I've come across where everybody on a video call, if they're in the same office, everybody has to be on the video, no matter where they are. And then also leaving video channels open so people can be much more natural and really getting used to these type of interactions as being the norm. And when it can become more normal, then it can be much, much more effective. But one of the challenges are, as far as I see it, when we've all been working in the same office, we sort of happen across people and like, Larry, did you get that thing done? And it's kind of random. And I sort of have an understanding of the kind of person you are and how you work. But if I'm never in the same room as you, and I don't ever meet you and sort of interact with you, I have to be that much more aware of myself and then of you, of how you work, so I can support you best and I can work with you best. And so it's actually raising the sensitization that we sort of need to bring to our work and how we can work effectively. And so if we're moving to having a team of, say, 5 people, and two of those people are working remotely, we need to really engage in who are those people, how do they work, how can I support them? One might be very independent, gets everything done easily. The other person needs to be checked in. They might feel isolated, whatever it might be, in order that we can work effectively. So we've gone from sort of quite random ways of management to being much more thoughtful about how we're interacting with people, and how we're engaging them, how we're leading them, and how we're understanding who we're working with. And so that goes to the soft skills, that I was mentioning. Those interpersonal skills are becoming increasingly important as we leverage all this technology and work in very different ways.
I think what you're hearing is we're both betting on decentralization.
Right. Which is fine, because I have a decentralized team. So.
Yes, I don't see it changing from that whatsoever. We're going in that direction. It's much more fluid. We have to be more able to be flexible, to be moving in different ways and working wherever the needs arise. We're doing that all the time. We're on the subway, we're doing this and that, and that's just the way it's not going to change from that.
Okay. One quick follow-up. You talked about the role of video, and also just the other one was following up on the team thing. Do you look at, like when you have a project, do you look at how you construct a team?
Absolutely. So there's functions in a company, but work doesn't get just done within a function. It gets done across the company. We're big believers in that, and we construct teams, and they come together, they break apart, do other things. So that's a very natural thing. It's hard because every time you construct a team, there's that norming, storming, understanding each other, understanding how we work, and it takes some adaptation, right, to get used to it. But once it's working, once it gels, it moves forward pretty nicely. And I think that does drive a certain need of adaptability in that I think employees need to be really good at. Because you can't just say, I joined this team and I only work within that team. Especially in IT, we work across every function. We bring marketing and sales together with finance. So we, as technology owners, are kind of the glue for the company, and the power of IT is the ability to connect the dots across the company. And if we don't leverage that, and we don't get really, really comfortable creating those teams and disassembling them, then we're losing out on a huge opportunity.
Okay. As far as it's one thing to reinvent the future of work, it's another thing to find a business value. How do you explain some of these efforts to your friendly neighborhood CFO who's trying to hit a quarter? Like, what are some of the metrics?
So one of the things I'm a big believer in, that as an IT leader, you have to put business outcomes ahead of technology. If you're only thinking about technology or just solving problems, we can be very heavily activity-based. But if you don't anchor on what are we driving revenue? Are we driving better employee productivity? Are we driving better experiences? We need a level of clarity and a way to anchor every project, every program that we do to that, and actually measure it. Most people will do heavy ROI on projects at the beginning, but nobody measures it after you go live. I think that's
they're scared to half the time.
They're probably scared to, but if you don't hit what you said you're going to hit in terms of business outcome, that's a lot of activity with no real value. And to me, that's the shift that I think I see in IT today. Most IT leaders think of themselves as business leaders first. We're here to solve a business problem. We're using technology to solve it, but we're here to solve a business problem. And with that mindset, you can definitely drive digital transformation in your company, be at the front, be a revenue enabler, and not the traditional IT that's known to be slow, rigid, expensive, sitting in a data center somewhere and running operations, right? That IT has evolved from that to where we are today. Today's need for IT is for IT to be at the front with the business.
In terms of value, I mean, I think where we're going, I'm enormously positive about the future of work in terms of being able to utilize amazing IT tools. We can actually help each person work how, where, and when they work best. We've never tried to. We had these incredibly rigid lines, and they had to work in a place between 9 and 5 or whatever it might be, and that didn't fit so many people in all kinds of ways, and wasting time commuting, all these different things. And now being able to get to a place where we can really recognize how we work best and be able to use these customized tools and to help people work in an isolated way and really be able to focus on what they're doing, or work amazingly in a team from wherever they are with the best people on that across the company. These are incredibly powerful things that we're able to unleash. Gallup, every single year, the data from Gallup is terrible about how disengaged or not engaged people are. It's always over 50, whatever percent. It's not surprising. I mean, we've not been trying to understand. If we thought money was the motivator, and now we have, so many, innumerable studies which show us that there are so many other things that actually motivate people to work, and connecting people with purpose and different mission, and just making themselves feel like their contribution matters. All these different things help people work better, and technology and how we're utilizing that as we move towards future of work environments, I find enormously positive.
So those business value metrics would be things like employee churn?
Yes, lower retention. If you can move to a results-oriented, to move strategically to a results-oriented, and sort of say, well, if you get your work done, whatever those goals may be, you can get it done however you want and wherever you want. And we're also dealing, not only with those type of metrics and being able to measure how people are actually, with the increased effort that they're putting into their work and what they're able to do, and they're actually able to achieve that much more. And we're able to see how ambitious they are, and being able to sort of take them on, to the next steps, because we're enabling them to actually connect with their strengths. We're moving away from, let's let people sort of support their weaknesses and sort of say, well, what is Larry really, really good at, and let him do that, more of that, and therefore if he enjoys it, he's going to do a better job, and then also be able to explore other skills and talents that you may have. I mean, we are able to move in very different ways throughout organizations, and able to leverage different skills, and those can be measured in different ways. It is definitely more complicated because things aren't as linear and static, and and a lot of the performance metrics or the performance review system is actually changing, and we're looking to sort of do weekly check-ins and things like that. So it's what I call a very messy period, where we're trying to work out kind of how we're going, where we're going, and it's all in different places, and how we're measuring that is not easy either. But I do believe that so much of the potential of people, the talent that people have in their organizations, is really being unleashed now through technology.
Okay.
Well, I would say in IT, as well as engineering orgs, we think of those metrics to be, are we driving more revenue, right? Is there a big revenue uplift out of the work that we do? Productivity also always makes people nervous, because they think that, okay, if the technology is going to do all this, what will I do? Will I lose my job? There's that nervousness about it. And I really think if you look at workplaces and product companies today, there's more employees than ever in the workforce. We've had so much of technology over the last couple of decades. It hasn't made the employees irrelevant, right? They're working on different things. Mm-hmm. They used to work in setting up, the physical layer of the data center. Now they're working in data science. The work has shifted. So of course, yes, there is a pressure to continuously retrain yourself and stay on top of technology curves, because you want to do higher value work. But if I told my team, hey, we're going to have a few bots do this work, then we could flatline certain growth on the certain part of the organization and invest in a different part, right? So there's definitely opportunity to do things like that, but productivity is an interesting metric, because every time I've brought it up with any business group, even IT, there's a nervousness about, okay, we have 10 people doing this and now you're only going to need 5. What does that mean, right? But I think it's amazing that if you look at productivity curve, you've seen big shifts in across the last couple of decades in employee productivity.
So the future of work is going to be defined by what? Is it psychology? Is it fads? Is it, what else did I write down? HR, skills, data? I could go on forever. But I guess what's going to define that?
Humans. I think it's all of that, right? If you think about what will work look like 10 years from now, it'll probably look like something we can't even imagine today. I don't think how we're working today could have been imagined 10 years ago. All of the technology shifts, the shared economy, the way we're going from one place to another, where we're working, how we're working, on what we're working, all of that has shifted over the last decade. I would bet that, companies are going to transform. Today we have all this real estate with thousands of employees in a building working on something. If you take remote work to that next level, and you say every employee is remote, and you're actually leveraging a shared economy where you're mapping skills to work. Skills go where the work is needed. They're not bound to a company. You can envision a completely different world 10 years from now, right? So I think it'll drastically change, and technology will lead the way.
A big shift in that is how much we understand our skills. I mean, if I asked every single person here, what are your top 3 skills? I'm not sure how many people would actually know, because we haven't been defined by our skills. We've been defined by our job title, and we have all kinds of skills that we haven't been utilizing that we can use in all kinds of different ways. So I think understanding what our skills are, and as we use them in different ways, and how that changes, and how our jobs move as sort of companies evolve and the different technologies, that's going to be very, very interesting. And very much on the human psychology, because we're resisting a lot of what's happening, and we're trying to sort of slow it down maybe, and understand it. And there's so much that is changing at the same time. It is very overwhelming. So I think the people who are able to understand and have that open mindset that Archana was mentioning, and be flexible, those are the people who are going to be at the forefront and helping sort of bring everybody else along, and be able to capture the upside much disproportionately. So very much on the human side of things, I totally agree.
So just to follow up on that the skill market, so to speak, what leads that? Is it workers, or is it going to be companies? Because it sounds great in theory, but there's pay grades based on your title.
It's interesting. I was talking to the CEO of Upwork, and talking to him, some of the freelancers, obviously their livelihood depends on how up-to-date their skills are. So there are millions of freelancers who are they are so ahead of the curve in terms of knowing what skills they have. Internally in organizations, if you're defined by your job title and you're not really sure of what your skills are, it needs to be both the company and the employee who's going to, the way we're going, careers are much more self-directed and much more self-managed. So there is going to be a lot of weight on the employee, whatever they're doing, to really be sort of focused on what am I going to need, what I want to do next, what are the different opportunities that I could do from here based on the trends that I see going on in my area, and kind of oh, there's an interesting project. And I know that Atlassian actually has this really cool way of, if a new project comes up, anybody, to a degree, can put their hand up. That's amazingly cool. So say, oh my God, I would love to try that out. That is, if that can be utilized in other companies, it's going to be huge. I know that AT&T has a way of basically showing these are the kinds of jobs that we see fading out over the next 5 years. And these the skills that are going to be needed, and these are some of the new jobs that are coming. So that's one of the ways that they are helping sort of give people fair warning, and sort of where they can go to. Of course, people need to want to do that. And people are getting really imaginative as well. There's actually a Chinese wind turbine company that identified that the same kind of tough engineering skills that coal miners have can be used for managing sort of the technicians to manage wind turbines. Now, so you can do that reskilling, but it's a very, very, very different type of work. So there are all kinds of ways to approach this. I think the burden's actually going to be on each person individually to manage their own career and upskill. And hopefully their employer will be part of that, and helping them with it.
So final question, since we're out of time. How does that raise your hand thing work? Oh,
it's actually really interesting. I do think functions and organizations are in Atlassian are very fluid. So people find out we have very open culture. We use Confluence for all of our social conversations within the company. Any new idea someone comes up with, we upvote it or like it, and it shows in the trending. So that is kind of our water cooler. Like, we know what's going on in the company based off of what blogs are upvoted to the top 10, top 15 any day, any week. So there is a, depending on what's cool and hot and exciting and how you generate that excitement, people chime in and go, hey, do I have the opportunity to work on that? And they'll book some time, they'll talk to their manager, they'll talk to the new manager, and it happens. So it is actually very fun to watch.
Sounds almost gamified a bit.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's fun. And it's great for employees because you're not pegged into a world that, where once you stop growing, once you stop learning, where do you have opportunities to grow more?
Right. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Sure. Thank you.